We started noticing that companies were stating values, things like, we value innovation, we value diversity, but they weren't always living those values out in practice in what happened inside their companies. So we wanted to understand, okay, how does this impact employees? How do employees react when their company says they value something, but they don't live it out? You can think of like Pride Month, where companies might change their logos to be rainbows, but internally, maybe they don't do anything to actually support folks throughout the year. So maybe you could fool a consumer, but you can't necessarily fool an employee because they're there every day seeing what goes on inside an organization. So we wanted to know, how do employees react to that? And we looked at what companies say they value, what employees actually experience in the workplace using data from Glassdoor and experiments. And we find that when a company says they value something and live it out, employees see them as more authentic and they give them higher ratings. So conversely, if you don't live out your value statement, then employees see you as an inauthentic workplace and they'll, ding you in their reviews. But that might not always lead to rewards. So say you work really hard, like we're a traditional company and we work really hard to instill these values throughout the organization. But if those values don't resonate with employees, they might see you as authentic, like, yeah, my workplace is really authentically traditional. But if they're like people who prefer innovation, all that work you did to be authentic doesn't end up mattering. That is, we think of authenticity as something super important, especially around values. But that work might not lead to any additional support from your employees if the values don't also resonate with their experience. When you state your values, the things that you care about at the core of your company, you really ought to think about what it is that you're stating, and you should make sure that you live those values out. If you don't, you can have backlash from your employees who will perceive you as less authentic. But at the same time, you also need to consider, how do employees perceive those values? Is it something that resonates with them? Is it something that they individually value? From the outside, you might not be able to tell what's going on inside the organization. So we should look for cues about, well, how do companies actually live out the values? Like, they say they're such and such workplace when we're interviewing, but what is it actually like on the inside? And so you see sites popping up like Glassdoor and others that can help you get a more well-rounded view of what are the values happening in the organization. This is very common if you think about diversity-based values. So recently, in the last 2 years, companies have started claiming, oh, we value diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is a core value of our company. But without doing the added work of really integrating those values into the day-to-day of their organization, holding people accountable for those values, then employees start to notice, hey, there's a disconnect here. You said you cared about diversity, but you're not living it out in your day-to-day practice.